Hi, everyone. We're going to get underway. I think there's still people coming through, but we will just kick off. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for this conversation about careers supporting a healthy ocean. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present and acknowledge their continuing connection to country, including land, waters and community. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and waters that everyone joining us tonight is coming from. We're coming from far and wide across the east coast of Australia. And recognise First Nations people's enduring knowledge, care and custodianship of our beautiful country. My name is Claudette. I'm the Ocean Literacy Lead and Ocean Youth Lead for OceanEarth Foundation. And it is my pleasure to bring us all together tonight to talk about a really important topic from all our perspective, but certainly one that's close to my heart, and that's about ocean careers. We're talking about ocean careers because we may not normally think about ocean careers in the way that we're going to talk about them tonight. When you hear a career working with the ocean, you might immediately think of marine biology. That's absolutely one pathway, but there are so many others. As the blue economy grows, we're increasingly needing people working across technology, engineering, law, policy, business, science, innovation, and many other areas. And because some of these industries are still emerging, the career pathways are not always clear or absolutely not necessarily linear. And that's what we're going to explore today. So rather than telling you there's one particular degree or pathway you need to follow, we're going to hear from three people tonight who have taken very different routes in their work that they're doing today to help protect our ocean and environment more broadly. So tonight I'm joined by Jim Smart from the Blue Economy CRC and Griffith University, Charlotte Connell from Greenhouse Tech, and Joe Schulman, CEO of the Environmental Defenders Office. Thanks all for being here tonight, and thank you to our guests who are joining us tonight also. So let's start with where each of you is now. Can you tell us what you do now and give us a sense of what an ordinary day in your job actually looks like? And I might start with Charlotte. Charlotte, if you want to kick us off.
Sure, thank you so much, Claudette. So I work at Greenhouse, which is a large climate innovation hub in Sydney, Australia's largest climate tech ecosystem. But I also, I was talking to Claudette before this started, I do also wear a few other hats. I'm the clean tech connector for Australia's #1 accelerator program that's run out of Newcastle University. I'm also on the board of Surfers for Climate, and I work with a few councils and governments on helping implement more sustainable and climate-friendly practices. Typical day is very interesting. I mean, there isn't a really typical day, but I work in that intersection of helping those ambitious, inspiring companies that have incredible ideas, incredible technology, usually novel technology, new, it's first of its kind, and I'll help them get connected with customers, community, and hopefully capital as well. So a lot of my day is involved in relationship skills. So, making sure that I'm connecting the right people, connecting the right dots. And also it's such a new industry that, I take it on my role to help build the literacy around that. So there's always a bit of, I'm definitely not, like Jim is an incredible educator and Joe's doing amazing work in the courtroom, but I do that sort of more helping people understand these new technologies and where they fit into your lives and make sure that they scale and are successful.
Yeah, brilliant. What about you, Joe? Joe, CEO of the Environmental Defenders Office.
Thanks, Claudette. I don't have one typical day, I have to say. That's the job of being a CEO. I wear a lot of different hats within the organisation and outside it. I guess EDO is, a national organisation that uses the power of the law to create a world where nature thrives. So that means I might be travelling across the country or through the Pacific. I might be meeting with funders to educate them on where their investments can make the biggest difference. I might be talking to communities about how we can work in partnership to achieve change. Or I might be in a courtroom watching one of our great pieces of litigation to stop a coal mine expanding somewhere across Australia.
Yeah, right. And Jim, you in Blue Economy CRC, the Centre of Research, Cooperative Research Centre?
That's right. Yeah, that's one of the research-focused things I do. What actually pays my wages day to day is working as an environmental economist in the School of Environment and Science and an outfit called the Australian Rivers Institute at Griffiths University in Brisbane. Maybe before I say a little bit about what my typical day is, and just like Joe said, I don't really have a standard typical day, but maybe I should say a little bit about what environmental economics is, because perhaps that might be interesting for folks. So, because it sounds a bit weird, economics and environment in the same title. Yeah, it sounds a bit conflicting. But what environmental economics is it's using concepts from economics to help understand the underlying causes of environmental challenges. So challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution impacts, and then apply what I guess you would call economic toolkit, like taxes, regulations, subsidies, to help design solutions that actually change the underlying behaviors that are driving the challenges. That kind of makes sense. So that's how those apparently conflicting things of environment and economics actually hang together. So as an environmental economist working in a university, I kind of split my time really between three main work areas, if you like. I teach, I do lecturing on environmental economics and on some other related subjects to undergrad and master's students. So that's people doing their first degrees and people doing a master's degree after they've got a first degree. I also work alongside PhD students and colleagues who are doing their own research on environmental economics and how it's applied to help advance solutions to particular environmental problems. And then I also conduct environmental economic analysis and research for government departments and for private sector businesses and for organizations like the Blue Economy Cooperative Research Centre, which is a kind of an amalgam of government and business funding looking to advance the blue economy sector, but in a way that is sustainable and environmentally acceptable. Yes, it's a mix of all those things. Is maybe not all of those things on any one day, but across a month or so, there's big chunks of each of those things.
That's so interesting. So with those two industries or fields effectively bringing them together, what skills did you use or develop or hone? What skills would you use in your particular role? And we'll work backwards across.
Yeah.
So Jim, what skills?
Well, this might surprise you, but I think the most central skill that I use is the same one Charlotte mentioned. It's people. It's connecting with people. Yeah, interacting with people, communicating and listening to people. Because sometimes when you think about economics, you'll think about, there's a lot of maths or there's a lot of science underpinning environmental issues, and there is. But I think the most important thing to helping understand the causes of these environmental challenges and work towards potential solutions for some of them is understanding people and being able to communicate with people. Because I don't believe there are many people at all who intentionally set out to stuff up the environment. That's not somebody's day job, yeah? But the way we live our lives, myself included, I buy a whole lot of stuff, hopefully not too much stuff, but some of that stuff's being produced in ways that are not very environmentally sensitive. And okay, you can try and moderate your behaviors and your purchasing behaviors and the decisions that we make to try and mitigate, reduce some of those impacts, but to understand how maybe those behaviors, like the purchasing behaviors, my purchasing behaviors, could be changed, you need to understand what's driving that. And you need to be able to talk to people and understand where they're coming from. You need to understand where industries and businesses are coming from too. You need to understand where farmers and fishers are coming from. They're making a living out of producing food that we're going to eat largely. So they have strong motivations for doing that. And generally, they have strong sustainability intent. So understanding people is actually, and being able to interact with people is central. On top of that, there are obviously, for some of the more academic bits, there's a bit of maths and there's a bit of science backup you need as well. So I think personally, I think an understanding and an ability to relate to people and understand where they're coming from and why they're doing what they're doing is really important for developing solutions to environmental challenges. Whether you actually do that through environmental economics, as I attempt to do, or whether you do other pathways like the other great panelists we've got here. So people skills are right at the front, and in my job, yeah, there's a certain amount of maths and sciencey stuff in there as well.
Yeah. Joe, we were talking a little bit before about being at the coalface of some of these big environmental law cases, I suppose. What skills do you use in your day-to-day job of protecting and working so hard to protect the environment?
I'm going to echo Jim. I mean, a lot of us at the EDO, not all of us, but a lot of us are lawyers. And so naturally, our skill set and what we've spent many years studying is advocacy, and how to construct an argument and how to find holes in corporate and government decision making, and then sue them, quite frankly. But as Jim said, that's at the pointy end, and there's a whole lot of skills that are needed before we get there, and a whole lot of skills, I have to say, that are taught in law school, but are probably the most important skills to be successful in this area. And that is communication, collaborative problem solving, outside the box thinking, and being willing to flexibility and adaptability, being willing to change your mind. And I've had many examples where I've been in the room or a courtroom or a boardroom on the other side of somebody where we're arguing about something they've done or want to do. And we've come to a resolution through some of those more flexible, softer skills than hardcore advocacy. So I think those are the most important.
Yeah. And Charlotte, I know you have had a really interesting career, and we'll talk a little bit more about pathways and choices along the way, but what are the common threads of the skills? I know we've talked, it seems like it's mostly about how we relate to people. Is there something else that comes up in your mind when you think about the pathway that you've taken over the last few career moves?
It is an interesting one, and I do think, yeah, I mean, no surprises here, communications and good relationship skills. But the great thing about a nascent industry, such that I work in innovation and startup, have degrees, that's fantastic, have fantastic career backgrounds, from big companies, but it doesn't count for much in startup. Like, really, people, your skills and your ability to learn and your agility, and that, to learn fast and have low ego is like the perfect unicorn for working in this space. And people really want that. You want an agile team, you want flexible team, you want people who understand that, newsflash, not everyone wants to save the environment, unfortunately. So you have these incredible startups who have incredible ideas, these amazing solutions. They've come up with this problem for the environment, but unless it's solving a customer problem, it has no chance of scaling. it has no chance of attracting customers or capital. So you really need to understand that. I can show some examples later, but it's like the co-benefit is this actually, while this scales, it creates cleaner oceans, but that's not why it's scaled. It's scaled because it makes ships go faster. But the co-benefit is that it is better for the environment. So I guess it's like that nuanced approach of understanding how you tailor your messaging for each audience, but it's also your ability to learn quickly. I think that's essential for the startup innovation ecosystem as well. I mean, Australia punches way above its weight. We're the second fastest growing startup ecosystem in the world, second to India, and we're the most capital efficient producer of unicorns. We have more unicorns for very little that we invest in. That might be a scarcity mindset that we can do so much more with so much less. But it's really, so to add on to, yes, you have to have great communication skills, great problem solving skills, great relationship skills, but also that agility and be able to learn quickly and adapt. I think that, and pivot. I know that was the most overused word 6 years ago, but it's true, and it holds true today.
Yeah, I can't help but have my teacher hat on and sort of backwards map, and this is what I do day to day in the classroom, is backward map to see how we can teach these skills in the classroom at high school. Because as we need more curiosity and as we need more sort of ability to identify problems and understand that you can have a role in solving them, we're getting less and less curiosity. We're getting less and less ability for kids to actually identify what is actually happening in the world. Or if they do, they don't see themselves as agents in that change. So I find this really, really interesting, is how we bridge the gap between what we need and what you use in the areas that you work in, and I do too, and then bringing them forward into the classroom to try and sort of ignite this as soon as is possible, effectively, for the next gen of solutionaries.
Can I add a story there, because I think that this is because we can get caught up with the how or the tactics and forget, at the core of it is those human to human interactions. But I remember thinking I was hotshot corporate communications person who knew everything there was to know about good communications, and I could write the best media release, and I hosted radio shows, TV shows, could write anything and get anything published. And I went to Vanuatu as part of an AusAid government program, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do your corporate communications, look out. And going to an island where the literacy levels are so low, but linguistically the most languages are spoken in Vanuatu than anywhere else in the world. Everyone listens to the radio, not necessarily anyone reads. And I had to deconstruct everything I thought I knew about good communications and break it down to its most basic format of building trust, and that can take time, and really good storytelling. But first of all, you need to understand before you're trying to be understood. And that was incredibly humbling. But yeah, it's a worthwhile experience to do.
It's a bit like going into the classroom, and it's a similar sort of metaphor, effectively, because that's what it's like going in, trying to sort of ignite young minds and realizing that we're nowhere near where we need to be as far as igniting those minds to understand, how to identify problems or realizing what's happening around them. Amazing. So looking at someone's job today, it's very easy to assume that it was a neat pathway that got you there. So that it was a linear, step by step by step, and here we are, a fully formed innovation specialist and environmental economist and CEO of EDO. But usually the reality is a lot messier. So maybe Charlotte will work back around that way. Let's start with you. When you first left school, what did you think you were going to do, and what actually happened?
I When I was 15, I started writing for oh gosh, I look like a tragic surfer with my kids put in the background there. I started writing for a surf magazine when I was still in high school, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a journalist. This is my shtick. Um, and yeah, along the way, there was a few things that I just thought there's definitely more I could. Oh, is there an echo? Is that just me?
Yeah, no, you're all good.
Okay, only I can hear the echo, which apologies. I sound terrible. But yes, along the way, yes, obviously not working as a journalist today, but I think those skills still come up. I've had so many different jobs. I've taught etiquette to NRL players. Don't blame me for how they behave. I've taught taught surfing in Mexico. Yes, worked in TV and radio, and somehow, I did want to have this. I wanted to do more, and I think maybe I was of that era of, if you really want to make a change in the world, you should actually go to EDO, definitely, and advocate for change at the highest possible levels. But for some reason, I thought it was to go live on a remote island and roll up my sleeves and volunteer. So yes, and then having that humbling experience of learning really good communications, I was able to take those skills with a global eco label in seafood and be able to walk the two worlds of industrial seafood, where there was quite a how do I describe this? The NGOs, environmental organisations, and the seafood industry definitely didn't have a very friendly relationship. But I was able to straddle those worlds, to meet people where they're at, to understand relationships, to understand what their problems are, and bridge that gap. And so they were really important skills. And I think when we come to innovation, it just comes down to problem solving. There's big problems out there, particularly in climate, and innovation ecosystem is all about creating solutions to those problems and helping them scale, and to making sure that they are actually solving customer problems so that they do have traction in economics. So I don't think, there was definitely not a linear journey, and I didn't think, climate tech wasn't even in the vernacular like 7 years ago. So it's a really nascent industry, but I think at the core of it, it's about problem solving. It's about connections. I love the way you put that, Jo, like collaborative problem solving, and bringing people on that journey. So not a linear journey, but there's definitely a through line.
What about you, Jo? Are you where you thought you would end up?
No. Believe it or not, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then somehow, I don't know how, because I was a terrible student, I got the marks to get into law. And I did what you do when you get certain marks. You just go where you're told to go. So I went to law school and ended up on the path to spending 2 years in a big law firm, which I absolutely hated, and then left pretty quickly to go to the not-for-profit sector as a lawyer. So worked in different human rights not-for-profit organisations. And the last one I worked in actually was an Indigenous organisation that helps kids in remote communities in particular. So I did a lot of travel around Australia, getting to talk to kids. And it was then that I had this epiphany that I needed to really look at how Indigenous Australians in particular work with and look after the environment, and how much we have to learn from them. I was just struck by their relationship to country in particular. Plus, I've had 3 kids, and just looking at the world ahead of them and the current state of climate. And so I thought I actually need to be working in environmental space, because environmental issues are human rights issues, the most important human rights issues. So that's how I ended up at the EDO. Fantastic. And not as a lawyer, because working as a lawyer is very hard.
A lawyer on our side. And what about you, Jim? How did you, what would you, where did you think you were starting, and how did you end up here?
Well, it was definitely not a straight pathway for me at all. I left high school in the north of England in 1981, and I don't think economist was even on the career advisor's radar, and environmental economist certainly wasn't. But just as Joe mentioned there, I used to be good at maths and science at school, so I went off to university and became an engineer. And I worked, when I graduated from uni, I worked as an electrical engineer for 15 years or more. So I used to design electric motors for washing machines and vacuum cleaners and other sort of home appliances, all that sort of stuff. And then in the mid-1990s, this is back in the UK in the mid-1990s, I was very interested in renewable energy. This was my sort of environmental angle starting to bubble up in my life. And in the UK at that time, the frontline thrust of renewable energy was wind turbines, land-based wind turbines. But they weren't really getting used. Renewable energy wasn't cutting through and replacing electricity generated from big coal burning power stations. And when I looked at this, I realized that that's not an engineering problem. The engineering of wind turbines solved, it worked. It was about economic issues, and it was about environmental objections. So what I decided I'd do at that point was I went back to university to do a master's degree to learn about environment and about economics, to see whether I could understand whether wind energy made economic sense, and also whether solutions could be found to environmental objections, solutions that were acceptable to both the communities that were going to host the wind turbines and the investors that were going to put the money into the wind farms. So that's my plan. I was going to do this master's degree, and then I'd go back and maybe somehow contribute to wider uptake of renewable energy. That's not what happened. I got hooked on environmental economics, its ability to, analyze and identify challenges and then potentially help pose some solutions or provide some solutions to those challenges. So that master's course, I was led fortunately to an opportunity to do PhD research in environmental economics, and that led to a lecturing position at a university in the UK, then to a university in Denmark, and then in 2012 to Griffith University here in Brisbane in Australia. And that's where I've been for getting on for 15 years. But it's absolutely not where I thought I was going when I left school. Completely, it's something that develops through time. It's not, opportunities appear, and if you feel like you want to go for them, you go for them. But it's not a plan. There's no coherent plan in that at all. But I'm very happy with where we got to, and I'm happy with the opportunities that have opened up for me, and the great people I've been able to work with through that time.
Yeah, I think that's really such a poignant point at this particular moment with all our year 12s facing their trial HSC. There's so much pressure. I've got one myself. There's so much pressure on year 12 kids to just have all of this sorted, go for the marks, nearly breaking themselves to think that if they miss this opportunity, then it's all done and dusted. And I think just over and over showcasing that there's so many different pathways to get where you think you might want to go, but then you might end up somewhere completely different on that pathway as well. I just want to send a reminder out. If you have any questions for Charlotte, Joe, or Jim, just please pop them in the chat, because I'm just asking questions that I've prepared earlier. But if you have a particular question, do put it in the chat and we can put it forward. Just on that theme of how much pressure there is on young people at this particular moment in time, not only are they facing so much competition at school to perform really well, but we're facing this, tidal wave or tsunami of AI that is threatening probably their level jobs to kick off with. I suppose I don't want to say what advice would you give to young people. Maybe what do you wish you'd known when you were younger, at 17, 18? looking back to see this messy pathway and opportunities and accidents and knockbacks and setbacks that happen along the way to getting where we all are now, what would you say to your younger self? Let's go, Jo.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because when Charlotte was talking about Vanuatu, it reminded me that we're just 1 year past the ICJ decision on Vanuatu, which is a decision by the highest court in the world, the International Court of Justice, that found that other countries, other nation states, including Australia, are responsible for the impacts of climate change on other countries. And that case was actually brought by a group of law students from Vanuatu on their own. I had a bit of help along the way, but they spent years researching, collecting evidence, and then deciding to stand up and take a case to the UN. So I guess, I'm sorry, I should say that case is pivotal in climate litigation across the world. People are relying on that case to argue that other countries should change their emissions or should protect their oceans because of the impact it has on their country. So it's a huge case and it will see huge outcomes. So I guess what I wish I knew when I was 17 is the power that you actually have to make a difference. And particularly if you are willing to stay with it and fight hard and work with others, great things can be achieved.
Yeah. Charlotte, do you want to go next? What would you tell your younger self?
I still remember a time in Vanuatu just on climate. Yes, there was an open university day and there was so many students from Kiribati. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. They must be a really ambitious nation, island. And it was no, because their home's disappearing. So the island nations, gosh, I'm so glad that you're working to help. Jo, I had a really unique upbringing in that I remember my dad would always say the jobs that you have, the jobs that you are going to be in aren't even around today. So it was always that mindset of, they're not here. But I think, and I also grew up in a household, Newcastle, largest coal exporting port in the world, steel city and real footy town. But the matriarch of my family was also the first female Lord Mayor in Australia, and she didn't have a formal education. She was a housewife, a 50-something-year-old housewife, mother of 4, and she saw that there was problems that needed solving and no one was willing to stand up and do it, and so she did it. So I think I was unique in that, the most unique solutions come from the strangest of places or the places you didn't always think so. So I think I would just keep telling my younger self that, keep listening for the voices that may not be at the table right now, because their perspectives probably have the solutions we need for tomorrow.
But that's also really formative to see that if there's a problem there and there's no one doing anything about it and then stepping up, I'm going to do something about that. To see someone do that is very transformative, because I see a lot of kids in the classroom that just feel really powerless. Their voice doesn't matter. And we've talked about how important their voice is. I know how important their voice is. But how for them to see that they have agency and to identify a problem and understand that they can be part of that solution, to see it firsthand is really, really transformative, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting relationship people have with politics too, because, at the time when she joined the Labor Party, women weren't allowed to vote at branch meetings, but she saw that as an opportunity to join and change from within. And I think that's a powerful way of implementing change. I don't think you always need to come at it from, a really far, far outside perspective, but you can change from within. So I think there seems to be like tribalism that, things can't be 100% good, like, oh, I can't believe you work for that organization. They're horrible. It's like, well, if you're not there and you're not meeting them and you're not working with them, how can you expect change to happen? So I think there's something to be said about engaging with all kinds of people and organizations, because that's the best and most effective way to make change.
Building bridges. Jim, what would you tell your younger self that what you know now, with what you know now?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say to my 18-year-old self is don't worry too much about what you can't do or the skills that you don't think you have. Yeah, work with what you've got, the skills that you're aware that you have at that point in time, and go with them. Because what might well happen is the skills that you don't think you have, if they're necessary for what you're going to do, they'll develop. I was a really shy, non-communicative, poor listener as an 18-year-old. Yeah. And the first thing, or the main thing I said when you were asking me about what's the skill set I use now, it's that exact skill set. I'm definitely not perfect at it, but it's something that's come through time because it was an important part of what I had to do with my work. Yeah. But if I'd listened to my 18-year-old self, I would never be here now. Yeah. Don't be crushed or constrained by what you think you can't do. Have a shot at what you can do and see what happens on from there. That's what I would have said to my 18-year-old self.
That's exactly right, because that first step, just taking a step, leads you to a new place with new people and new insights that you can then use to make your next step. And often that's how I notice, certainly I got my opportunities. I think probably Charlotte, you're the same, just by taking the next step, meeting the new people, seeing what they're doing and what does that present and what opportunities are there. And then that informs the next step. So starting where you are, yeah.
Because I didn't answer that question very well, but
No,
I think
not at all.
Because I was just inspired by Jim in terms of that, trust the journey. Maybe that's what I would probably say. You don't have to have all the answers straight away, and be patient. Those big problems, they won't be solved in your lifetime, and they won't be solved in the next career move. That just, it's good to know that there's steps. It's not an end destination.
Yeah, just have a go, have a crack. We've got a question in the chat. How does the little person start making a big difference? Anyone want to have a go at that? So I suppose it's around about what we've been talking about anyway. Are there some maybe examples of young people making a big difference that you're aware of and would like to share?
They're in my. Can I share my slides? Because there's some people who are making amazing differences. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'll go.
Indulge me, Jim and Joe.
I will go to it in a minute because I know who you're going to talk about.
Yeah. Oh yeah, All right, go.
But I was going to say, I know of some in our Ocean Youth program that have made a huge difference through their school communities. But it is going back to those same things. They've got the courage to speak up, the courage to step up, the courage to organise a meeting with the principal and talk about their ideas or identifying a problem and getting the traction from their leadership to be able to, pursue some ideas of how to solve some of these problems. So it's going back to the skills that we were talking about before: communication, listening, courage, being brave to step out. Joe, you've got your hand up. What were you going to add to that?
I wasn't going to directly answer the question, but I guess to say that we need to hear the voices of young people, because you guys are the ones who are going to be here when everyone on this panel is gone. And as we've said, the solutions to a lot of what we're dealing with are not yet developed. So we need you to engage now and speak. We need to, and we'll listen. I know EDO, for example, is going through a process where we're setting up a youth advisory committee, and we'd very much love people to put up their hands, because you may not realize that you have the solutions, but through, talking with others, through listening, through learning, and through kind of problem solving, which are all skills that you all have, we together can find those solutions.
Absolutely. So just, I suppose, in the segue to showcasing what Charlotte was talking about, some of the inspiring stories that are happening in the blue economy space. If we're talking about blue economy specifically, and by blue economy, we're talking about ocean-based industries or ocean-related industries. So if we think about shipping or aquaculture or renewable energy, tourism even, what in your spheres are you seeing as some emerging, maybe, I won't say jobs because they're not really classified as jobs, but where do you think there might be some areas of growth that young people might start to investigate within the blue economy? So if we're talking about, young year 11, year 12s choosing their subjects or choosing their universities, or even younger choosing their year 11, 12 subjects, what are some areas that you see of high growth in the blue economy area? Or for Jo, maybe more broadly, environmental. Are there some emerging industries that are gaining some traction?
I'll jump in. Obviously renewables, and the skills to develop, I guess, solutions, but also, from the legal side, more negotiate, advise communities, and to use these opportunities like transition to change the story for those who've been traditionally disadvantaged by things like the mining boom. So I forgot exactly what the question was, Claudette.
Just about some emerging opportunities that are sort of,
So
we know that a lot of the jobs yet haven't even been created in the next sort of 5-year term. But I know, for example, that we need about 30,000 electricians for the transition to renewables. And in New South Wales, there are 2,000 or 3,000 that are going into the trade each year. So we're about 27,000 odd short electricians to help us transition to renewable energy, as an example. So that's a trade.
And I guess, from our perspective, it really is community builders. So people who can engage with those communities, like First Nations communities, but also other communities who don't traditionally have a voice, and who can actually change their story through transition, find economic opportunities, find opportunities for education, etc. So it is those community builder, community relations, community engagement, and education pieces, I think, where there'll be real opportunity.
Yeah. I take great joy in just teaching kids how to grow food at my school. Some basic skills. They weren't able to identify silver beet as it was grown in the garden. So just some basic food growing skills, seed collecting skills, going way, way back to basics. That's not even emerging. That's just survival. That's just what we need to kind of exist, try to reduce the food miles that are coming from their food, knowing where their food comes from. What were you going to say, Charlotte?
It is an interesting time because never before has there been this time where energy and decarbonisation in that space is actually a national security issue. And you bring up the food growing, it's also a sovereign capability issue. So we are seeing, like, climate tech globally, there has never been so much capital mobilisation in the first half of this year, and that is driven by data centres, the demand of the energy that's driving, and that hasn't even come up to the fossil fuel crisis yet. So we'll see how that hits. So definitely, energy is huge, renewable energy, skills in that. I think LinkedIn does this, skills survey, and if you have green skills, you are 54% more likely to get the hire. And a lot of them are in this, grid transformation, energy installation area as well. But yes, so like we're seeing a lot in that low carbon liquid fuels area as well. That's a huge area that's coming up, and more in the circular economy too, because there are more of that, not, the carrots coming out with legislation too. So there's a few trends in that. But AI, you mentioned before, Claudette, is a huge one, and it's this twin transition that's happening with climate, transition to decarbonize, but also like this hungry energy demand driving beast that can make things more efficient, faster, better, stronger, more efficient. But if it's doing it the wrong way, it's actually not serving our climate the right way. But on the flip side, hardware is AI proof in a way. So we've seen a lot more climate tech and a lot more interest around emerging startups that have that hardware component, because they can't just be replicated. They have a better IP moat around them. So it's interesting. AI's, has leveled the playing field with a lot of startup ideas, but only the really good ideas and those hardware technologies are coming to the front.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, should we share some of your inspiring stories within the innovations space? I might just see how I can share my screen. I tried this before, so hopefully it works now. Let's see. Except I've got to figure out.
I didn't answer that very well, but if you can make the ability to make things is going to be a really sought after skill as well.
Absolutely. And deal with our waste, which comes into the circular economy. But waste management is a very interesting space. All right. I'll let you.
Dr. Julia, what's the last name? Receipt. She came in this, maybe it's a little bit more linear in a way, but as a researcher in plastic pollution, has come up with Ulu, which is a bioplastic made entirely from seaweed, not seafood. There's another one that does that. But they've raised a lot of capital so far. They're employing over 30 people in Perth, and they have partnerships with big brands, and you can buy a Quicksilver wax comb that's made with bioplastic from Ulu, which is really, really cool. So really getting to the heart of the problem. Julia co-founded a bioplastic solution, which is really, really cool, a climate tech, deep tech solution.
Perfect.
And Tom, who was an engineer and made furniture. So Hullbot, and this is a great Autobot, a little autonomous robot that can clean the hull of ferries, ships, to no surprises there. Nobody cares if their ship's clean or not, or like the waste that goes around, but it actually makes the ferries and ships more efficient. It reduces drag, and reduces drag and reduces the amount of fuel they use. It's a really climate friendly and wonderful company. And he's an avid sailor, so loved being around the oceans, cleaning the hulls manually, and came up with this. So combine those skills, combine that passion, and had a $16 million raise earlier this year, or was it late last year, led by Leonardo DiCaprio's venture capital firm. I thought Caitlin is the Chief Operating Officer of a not-for-profit, Surfers for Climate, because I thought it was, I want to have some startups in there, but I also wanted to show like the NGO, because I come from the not-for-profit sector originally as well. But this is an organisation that punches well above its weight, and engages the communities across the East Coast, or across the coastal communities of Australia. She's now in WA, from a boogie boarding program to engage women over 60, through to longboard competitions, shortboard, everything in between. And she started off in fashion labels in e-commerce. So she was an e-commerce gun, and is now Chief Operating Officer of an NGO that works in the ocean health space. And Sam started off in fashion and, took that Cyro technology or research that says Asparagopsis can help reduce methane from cattle, raised over 41 million. It's now ASX listed and employs over 30 people. He spends most of his time in Byron, but was also I think Tasmania's Australian of the Year. And, has partnerships with Grilled Burgers, MJ Bale, which is a fancy suit company as well. But yeah, so, you don't necessarily need to be the scientist, but you can have that really great marketing and know how to run a business. So, he didn't come up with the technology for this. Asparagopsis to reduce methane in cattle has been around for a while. Cyro, Cyro research that he scaled. So it's really cool. And I thought I'd bring up, not just founders and people who work there, but Olivia is one of the most intelligent people I know, and she's a classically trained musician, and she was going to be a musician in an orchestra, but somehow found herself in startup and now works at Zefco, which is and the founder of Zefco told me created this amazing technology that coats and colors fabric with plasma but without water. Now that doesn't seem like maybe that doesn't, so what? But fabric dyeing and the manufacturing of fabrics for clothing accounts for 3% of global emissions, which is more than aviation. It's also incredibly polluting for waterways and rivers that fall into our oceans. So Cefco is this amazing technology that reduces all that and cheaper and can plug and play into manufacturing. And their pilot plant is being distributed this year, and so you'll get plasma coated and coloured Nike shoes, Patagonia jackets, Zara, H&M, with all the big clothing brands. So it's pretty cool. But, Olivia is now their head of communications, and she started life out as a classically trained musician. And when the young people, Cal, what an amazing person. He started life out in water polo and working for a swimwear brand. And it was when they were training in the ocean, seeing all the plastics there, that he was became really, really passionate about solving this. He now makes documentaries, which, was the same documentary producer as David Attenborough's last film. He's touring the plastic country now. And he also works for Surfers for Climate with OceanEarth leadership program, Blue Minds. So, and has, talked to over 11,000 students. But yeah, a water polo player who was working at a swimwear company, is one of Australia's, or globally, a leader in ocean advocacy. So again, different. There's not exactly a university degree for the sorts of jobs these people have, but I thought it'd just be good to give a bit of a flavour of the different startups, but also different career paths of just a few people I know.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And just going back to Cal, I've known him for a few years as well. He started his main starting point was, if climate change is such an issue, why did schools not have solar panels? And so he was advocating for solar panels to be put on his school to the principal, via the principal. And when the principal said no, he looked for grants and funding through the department and various options, so that funding wasn't going to be the obstacle to putting solar panels on at school. So saw the problem. We were all talking about it. Why weren't our educational institutes not doing anything about it? And so figured that he might be able to, and that's how it all started. So going through that process and learning how people work and how to talk to people that you've not talked to, or how to talk to people who have got leadership roles. They're all important skills that young people can practice whilst they're at school, in preparation for the big change making that goes on well beyond. So we're about to wrap it up. I can see someone is typing a question in, so I'll go to that in just 1 second. But while they're typing, I just wanted to ask, it's something that I ask everybody who comes on these webinars, is what's one action that you personally take to support a healthy ocean or a healthy planet?
I could start with that if you want, folks.
Perfect.
You asked for sort of a single action, so avoid using plastics and products that contain microplastics, because they're pretty much going to end up in the ocean. Yeah, almost all of that microplastic pollution is going to end up in the well, not all of it, but a very substantial amount of it's going to end up in the ocean. It's going to end up in the digestive systems of seabirds and turtles, and massive problem. And if I'm using those type of products, I'm part of the problem. I need to be part of the solution by stopping using those products, those types of products. So deplasticize, that's my action.
Beautiful. Deplasticize. Sounds like a t-shirt. Jo.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking about where a lot of our work focuses in relation to oceans. And I think it is very much about making sure that we support those countries that will be underwater in the near future. So not directly supporting oceans, but supporting those who are going to be underwater by visiting them, by, by doing everything we can to advocate for them.
100%. Charlotte, what's one thing you do?
I choose MSC certified seafood. So I do believe in the power of purchasing, and I do believe rewarding those that do it really sustainably, that those that pay living wages, that those that do it well, is a really great economic, moving the market so that you reward those that, we can hopefully have more healthy, thriving oceans.
And tying that back to young people, you'll be ecstatic to learn of one of our Ocean Youth ambassadors who lived in Albury Wodonga, who was blown away by Marine Stewardship Council, the fact that there was such a thing for seafood, but that their local supermarkets in Albury Wodonga, no one stocked MSC certified product. So, talking about advocacy and youth voice, she approached the store manager to understand why they weren't supplying MSC certified product, and had MSC certified product secured in that supermarket as a result. So young voices do matter, and people do listen, and that was an awesome it was wonderful to just watch this young person's journey go from learning this amazing certification existed to support the ocean, and then had it in put into her local supermarket. So that was beautiful to watch. Someone has asked, do you have any advice for youth wanting to make their voices and ideas heard? Kiara. I think we have talked a bit about young voices. I think unless someone would like to add something, I think it's just understanding what you would like to advocate for. Who is the nearest person to you that you can start talking to about your ideas, and see how you might formulate some ideas that you can actually implement. You will realize that all around you, there are so many people who want to help you and see you put those solutions in place. So I would suggest, if you're at school, go to your principal. If you're in the workplace, maybe go to a colleague and see what it is that you'd like to actually start to make change around, and see what the next steps might be. I know that all of us are mentoring young people, so maybe reach out to one of us on LinkedIn. That's another good step, start to creating your networks, is reaching out to all of us. I know some people did after our last webinar, and we're more than happy to start putting you in touch with people within our networks to start helping you on that change-making journey. I don't know if anyone else has got anything to add for Kiara.
No, Claudette, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to drop off. I've got my own young person's birthday celebration. So
Oh, thank
thank
you so
you.
much for making the time, Jo. Thank you.
Oh,
Happy
it's
birthday
lovely
to
to
your
talk.
young person.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.
See you. We're about to wrap up anyway. Thank you. I'm a marine socio-ecologist in a business and creative industries school, and we'll share the amazing contemporary examples. Much appreciated. Welcome. I know there's a lot of amazing stuff happening. I know it can all feel a bit, overwhelming and dire, but there is some really, really good stuff happening. I think the one message that's come through really strongly today is that there isn't one pathway into an ocean career, there's multiple, and that the biggest skills that you can start to learn are people skills, learning, listening, approaching, talking, just starting to build your skills around how you relate to other people. The people we need to create a healthier ocean won't be the marine scientists alone. We'll need scientists, certainly, but also technologists, lawyers, engineers, entrepreneurs, innovators, communicators, teachers, economists, all bringing their skills and perspectives together, because some of these challenges are enormous and we need everybody on board. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Jim, Jo, who's now left, Charlotte. Thank you so much for your generosity in spirit and time, and I know that it was hugely valuable for me, so hopefully it's valuable for all who watch. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. I hope today's conversation has given you some ideas and perhaps taken a little bit of pressure off having you to have all the solutions to your career solved now, because it's not going to happen like that. It's going to be an interesting journey, but just be brave and don't be scared to take first steps. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I'll just add, and don't be afraid to fail, because you learn so much more from them. So yeah.
Absolutely. Great point.
Failures are good.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.